Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama. And for today's episode of Mom Street, we are focusing on strollers. Every parent's best friend, whenever they go to the parks, I feel like is a stroller. So today we are going to be talking about the ins and outs of strollers. We're going to be talking about what to consider. Should I bring my own? Should I rent one? What type of stroller do I need? All of those types of questions are what we are going to tackle today. So let's go ahead and jump in to the information that we've got for today. The first thing that I do just want to mention is that taking strollers to Disney is a major thing to consider when you're visiting with kids anywhere from infant all the way up to 8 or 9 years old. You know your kiddos best, or the kiddos that you're going to be visiting with. If they need a stroller, bring them a stroller, right? There's always lots of debate on, well, my kid is 7 or 8. Should I bring them a stroller? Well, you know whether or not they're going to be able to handle the type of park day that your group does. If you're a group that just does a few things in the morning, takes a break in the afternoon for the pool, and then goes back in the evening, they may not need a stroller. But if you're a group that is like rope drop to park close, you're there all day, you might take a break somewhere in the middle, you might not. Then they might need a stroller. So it really just depends situationally on what your group needs, what the needs are of your kiddo, what the needs are of the grown-ups in your group as well. So you just really have to make that decision for yourself and decide whether or not a stroller is something that you need. For me, for example, I have a 6-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. My 8-year-old, on our last trip, there were only maybe 2 instances the entire time that he asked to ride in the stroller. He's pretty good. He's solid. He wants to walk. He wants to lead the way. He is my map reader that wants to, figure out where we need to go next and how we're going to get there and be in charge, right? Now, my 6-year-old, very, very, very different. She rode in the stroller probably 75% of our trip. So they're just very different kids. They're 2 years apart, but very, very different kids. So my 6-year-old absolutely is going to need a stroller for probably another 2 years, whereas my 8-year-old is pretty much done with the stroller life when it comes to the Disney parks. So again, you know your kids best. All the way up through 8, 9, 10 years old, you know whether or not they're going to be able to hang and do what you want to do when it comes to your Disney vacation. So, this episode is going to focus mostly on Disney rules for strollers in the parks, and then my suggestions for bringing strollers to Disney, as well as some information about rentals and where you can do stroller rentals at both Disney World and Disneyland. So, both of those we're going to be chatting about today. I will just briefly mention that kind of hand in hand with strollers when it comes to Disney are park bags and how you pack your bags and what you leave in the stroller and what you take with you and that type of information. So we did a whole episode on what's in my Disney park bag. That was episode 92. So if you scroll back a little bit in our archives, you can find information on that. So if you're looking for more information on what to bring in my stroller, I go through kind of my whole plan and course of action with that. But basically, in a nutshell, I suggest when it comes to packing your stroller, anything that's replaceable can be left in the stroller. So something that, if it were to go missing, if it were to fall out, if somebody were to grab it out of your stroller, you never know what might happen. It's something that it will not ruin your trip to lose. Everything else needs to go in a separate bag that is on you at all times. Your phone, your wallet, your ID, those types of things, you always, always, always want to hold on to them. They are irreplaceable, especially when you're at the Disney parks. So that would be my suggestion, kind of in a nutshell, as far as that goes. If you want more details about what specifics, check out episode 92 of Mom Street for that. So let's go ahead and jump into our stroller rules. I'm going to talk a little bit about both parks and kind of what they look like. You will find that both parks are pretty much the same when it comes to their stroller information. So at Walt Disney World in Florida, the regulations for strollers can be strollers larger than 31 inches in width and 52 inches in length are not permitted. Now, I will say if you've got like a single stroller, you're golden. You're not going to have to worry about those regulations. If you've got a double stroller, that's where you really need to start to pay attention because a lot of them are going to be just at that maximum, especially length. With You can find if you do this side by side, like jogging strollers, things like that. But if you've got one of the inline strollers, which I'll talk about double strollers here in just a little bit, they're going to be really close to that length. So you really want to pay attention to that. And a big note that stroller wagons and just wagons in general are not permitted in the Disney parks. The only exception to that is if you qualify to get your stroller deemed a medical device for a medical need. And I'll get into that here in just a little bit and what exactly that means. At Disneyland, you will find the same things apply. So, strollers larger than 31 inches by 52 inches are not permitted. So, same dimensions as what we just found at Disney World for Disneyland, and same thing as far as their stroller wagons and just wagons in general are not permitted unless they are deemed medically necessary. So, again, I'll talk about that just briefly in a moment. But before I hop onto that, let's talk about what it's like to take strollers through security. Because this is something that I feel like is not often talked about when it comes to the topic of strollers at Disney. So, when you are going through security lines at the Disney parks, Disney Springs, downtown Disney, if you're in Anaheim, the strollers are going to have a separate line when you go through security. So you will have security guards that are directing you and they're saying, strollers to the left, everybody else to the right type of deal. So strollers are not going to be physically pushed and wheeled through the metal detectors that they have at the security lines. Another thing to note is that the security guards that work those security checkpoints at Disney are going to need to be able to see to the bottom of any storage that is underneath your stroller when you are going through. So they're going to ask you as you wheel your stroller up, you're going to park it. You're going to take everything out of the bottom of your stroller and you're going to carry it through the metal detector with you. Or if you are at Disneyland, oftentimes they're now using more of an airport security style when you're going to put it up on like a conveyor belt and it's going to go through the metal detector devices that way when it comes to bags. But either way, they have to be able to see to the bottom of your storage that is in the bottom of your stroller. So you got to think about how you want to pack your bags. Backpacks, packing cubes for the bottom of your stroller, something that's easy to grab. You don't want a ton of loose items in the bottom of your stroller because then you're going to be fumbling trying to get them out. You're going to be fumbling trying to get them through security and then back into your stroller. So, having kind of an organized system, whether that's Ziploc bags, whether that's packing cubes, whether that's certain, smaller backpacks, whatever your system may be, you just want to make sure that you have a plan because you want to be prepped for that when it happens. So definitely something to consider about when it comes to strollers at Disney. The other thing to really consider is what type of stroller do I want to bring, right? There are so many different configurations and styles and brands and all those types of things when it comes to strollers at Disney. So, here is some of my advice that I will give to you. Just a little background knowledge. I have taken, I think, 6 or 7 trips now with strollers, and I have taken kiddos in strollers that range anywhere from about 18 months all the way up through my son is 8 now. So I've got kind of that realm of experience. And then this previous trip, I also went with my 10-month-old niece. So again, lots of experience when it comes to strollers in the parks and kind of what configurations work well. Um, Overall, when it comes to strollers, the smaller and more lightweight the stroller, the better. You don't want these big, heavy strollers in the Disney parks because there's lots of maneuvering you're going to have to do. You're going to have to fold up, you're going to have to carry them, you're going to have to haul them on, all those types of things. So you want to really have a more small and compact and lightweight stroller to make your life easier when it comes to the parks. I would always also suggest to bring a stroller that you are familiar with and you have experience using. Be sure that you know how to fold and unfold the stroller for the bus, the tram, any sort of travel that you may need to do that requires you to fold that stroller up. You do not want to be the person at the bus stop that is in a panic because you don't know how to fold your stroller up and the line behind you is waiting to board the bus to go to Magic Kingdom, right? So you want to make sure that you're familiar with it or that you just take some time to practice. So if you're going to rent something new or borrow from a friend or buy something new, you want to make sure that you have plenty of time to practice all of the ins and outs to, folding it down, getting it back out, figuring out how all of that works. Some of them have locks on them, some of them have releases on them. Every stroller is a little bit different. So you want to make sure that you take the time to do that. Now, if you are somebody who is going to need a double stroller, you have two kiddos that you know are going to need a stroller either part of the time, most of the time, whatever your needs may be. I personally suggest using the strollers that are single line. I do not suggest using the side by side ones as much. They're harder to maneuver and they are harder to get on and off like the monorail if you are going to be taking the monorail at any point in your trip, and they will have to be folded down on the Skyliner, whereas if you have a inline single line double stroller, they can be wheeled right on because they will still fit within between the benches on the Skyliner. So, if you are planning to take any of those modes of transportation, you really want to consider what type of double stroller you're taking. Now, if you're taking the bus, they still have to be folded up. If you're driving, obviously they're going to be folded up in a car, and then they're going to still need to be folded up if you're taking a tram in a parking lot to get to the parking when it comes to that. As far as going through security, doesn't really make a difference because the process is the same as far as single strollers versus double strollers versus inline versus double wide. So just primarily for transportation at Disney World, I suggest doing an inline stroller and for navigating so that your footprint when you're navigating through the park is more narrow and not as wide to kind of navigate through those crowds. And you can also consider if you've got more than one adult with you, using two single strollers instead of a double stroller. There's something to be said for a little bit more ease of maneuverability if you've got a single stroller versus the double stroller. So considering maybe using two smaller single strollers versus one bigger double stroller may be in your benefit as well, depending on your situation and whether or not that's something that your group can do. So let's talk about if you are planning to rent a stroller, what are some of these options that you have? We're going to talk in depth kind of about several different options and different places that you can rent from. We're going to start right from the source, and that is rentals in the Disney parks. So we're going to talk about Disney World first and then Disneyland. As far as rentals in the park, Disney World does offer two different styles of stroller rentals. They have a single stroller, which they suggest being a child that is 50 pounds or less. So that's kind of their suggested maximum for these strollers. And that is $15 a day or $13 daily if you do a length of stay. And I'll explain that here in a moment. And then they also have double strollers, and their double strollers are side by side doubles. So they are not the inline ones that I was talking about just a little bit ago. Their double strollers, they suggest a weight capacity of 100 pounds or less, and that would be total, right? So if you've got two kiddos in there, you got to consider that. And those are $31 a day or $27 a day if you do length of stay. And just a quick note that in the parks, they don't require any deposit, but at Disney Springs, there's a $100 credit card deposit that is put on your card as a hold until you return your stroller back to them. So just a note, if you're planning to rent at Disney Springs, that is an option, but just note that hold will be placed on your card. So the way that the length of stay works, and this is primarily for Disney World, because Disneyland does not have this offering. But at Disney World, you can do a length of stay rental. And the way that that works is at the parks, you will prepay for the number of days that you are going to require a stroller. So you purchase it ahead and then you hold on to that receipt and it will have the dates on there for you. And you will then just show your receipt at the rental location to receive your stroller for the day and you won't have to pay again that day. So you pay for it ahead of time, the beginning of your trip, then you just hang on to that receipt for the length of your trip. So that's a great option if that's something that you know you're going to want to have every day. I will, though, mention that strollers are always first come, first serve at the Disney parks. So even if you've done a length of stay, you still want to make sure you get there early to ensure that you get the stroller that you're wanting for your day in the park. And just a note that these strollers need to be returned to the rental location before leaving the theme park. So if you're park hopping, you have to, let's say you're starting at Magic Kingdom and you're park hopping over to Epcot. Even though it would be super easy to just roll your stroller right onto the monorail to go over to Epcot, that is not Disney policy. You have to return that stroller to the location that you rented it from before you leave the park. Now, also note that if you misplace your stroller, replacements are available with your receipt at locations throughout resort property based on availability. So that receipt that you get after you purchase that rental stroller is so important. You want to make sure that you don't lose it. You want to make sure you hang on to that, put it somewhere very, very safe where it will stay dry and it will stay nice. So that way you have it. Even if it's just for the day, you want to make sure that you hang on to that just in case something happens to the stroller that you're currently using. Now, where to rent your strollers at the Walt Disney World parks for initial rentals at Magic Kingdom, it is under the Main Street Railroad Station. So, after you tap into the parks, as you're walking underneath the train, you're going to head towards the center of that to find rentals there. At Animal Kingdom, after you enter the park, it is on the right-hand side of, like, their guest services area. So go through, tap in, and then go directly to the right to find the rentals there. Same thing at Hollywood Studios. It is to the right as you enter the park. At Oscars is the name of the little shop over there. At Epcot, they've got two locations because they've got two entrances. So if you are coming in the main entrance at Epcot, it is left of Spaceship Earth. So as you're looking at Spaceship Earth, don't go under it. You want to stay out from underneath it and go to the left where you'll see all the strollers and ECVs lined up. And then at International Gateway, it's just at Guest Relations. So that is going to be directly after you tap in on your left-hand side is Guest Relations at International Gateway. So that would be if you're arriving from the Skyliner or like the Boardwalk Beach Club area. And then if you are looking to rent at Disney Springs, their one rental location is between the Coca-Cola store and Wolfgang Puck's restaurant. So that is where you will find rentals there for strollers. So that's Disney World. Let's talk briefly here about Disneyland. A little bit less to talk about. They have some less options just because they tend to have more locals. You guys have heard us talk about that on Mom Street. So they don't really have as many options there. But at Disneyland, they do have a single stroller and a double stroller. They are the exact same. So if you're familiar with what they look like at Disney World, they are the exact same strollers at Disneyland. And we'll talk about kind of the makeup of those here momentarily. The single strollers at Disneyland are $18 a day, and the double strollers are $36 a day. And just a note here that while we talked about park hopping before with Disney World, Disneyland is different because the parks are so close together. They do allow those strollers to be used at both Disneyland and Disney's California Adventure. So if you're park hopping between the two parks, you don't have to worry about returning the stroller and getting a new one to park hop across the plaza there, which is kind of a nice perk that Disneyland allows you to do that. And where to rent at Disneyland. Is all in one location. So we talked about that they let you park hop with them because all of the rentals for strollers for Disneyland and DCA are found outside of the main entrance of Disneyland. So it will be before you tap into the park on the right-hand side at their guest relations area. So for both DCA and Disneyland, that is where you will get your stroller rental. So if you're planning to then go over to DCA, give yourself a little bit of extra walking time to walk over to Disneyland and then across the plaza to DCA. Not that it's very far, but you get the idea. So now, these stroller rentals in the parks, let's talk about them. They are hard plastic strollers. They are not super comfy, they are not padded, and they are definitely not infant friendly. They do not recline. They are, again, like I said, very hard plastic. They do have seat belts in them. But as far as like age goes, I don't know that I would consider using one of these until my kiddo was probably 18 months at the very youngest because they're just not situated and set up for good infant support when it comes to sitting in strollers. And if you've got a really, really wiggly kiddo, they don't have as much like side support to kind of keep them upright as they're wiggling and moving around in your stroller in the parks. They also do not provide any storage underneath or like cup holder storage on the top by the handle either. So that is also something to definitely consider because if you're like me, you use that storage underneath that stroller for a lot of stuff and you want cup holders for your water bottles. So those are big things to consider if you're planning to rent, and those are really important things to you. Maybe looking at an outside rental company, which we're going to talk about here in a moment, might be a better plan for you rather than planning to rent one inside the Disney parks. And again, we talked about those rental strollers cannot leave the parks. So, transporting back to your resort hotel can be really, really rough. Getting to the bus, getting off the bus, and back to the room, you then have no stroller to help you carry your stuff, carry your kids if they're sleepy. Those are really big considerations to make. So, for that reason, unless it's just a last effort or a last option, I don't know that I would suggest renting in the parks. I would more so look at some of these outside companies to rent from to see what different options that they offer. And that is where we are going to head next. So, the goal now is to give you guys some recommendations from not only our Mom Street community, but from different blogs online and kind of forums that I've read for some companies that people have utilized a lot in Disney World and Disneyland to do third-party rentals. So we're going to start with Disney World. The first company that I do want to mention for our Disney World side of these third-party companies is Scooterbug. And Scooterbug is the official affiliate for Disney World. So they are the company that Disney will suggest that you work with, and they are the company that is quite honestly the easiest to work with at Disney because they are the ones that are allowed to do drop off and pickup right at concierge at your Disney resort. The other companies, they have some additional stipulations now that Disney has put into effect in the last like 3 or 4 years where you have to be there in person or there's other stipulations and you can look all that up whenever you go to rent and to make sure that you know the exact needs of that rental agreement, right? But with Scooterbug, they can do drop off and pick up right at concierge, which is really nice. They do rent wheelchairs, ECVs, and strollers at that. At Scooterbug, but we're just going to focus on the strollers in this episode. But it is good to know if you're someone who maybe needs more than one device from them. If you need an accessibility device and a stroller, then that's good to know that they have several options for that. Now, with their stroller options, you can find all of this, by the way, at scooterbug.com/Orlando. They will give you specifics on what styles of stroller they offer, the makeup of them, those types of things. There's single stroller options for rentals. I'm going to give you just kind of a generic price breakdown. Now, this may change depending on the style of the stroller that you choose. If it's a bigger, fancier stroller that's got more cup holders and more storage and things like that, it may be more expensive. If it's a more basic one, you may find a less expensive price. But for 1 to 3 days, you're looking at $64. For 4 days, $75. For 5 days, $80. And it kind of just goes up from there incrementally. So a 5-day rental of their stroller is going to cost you $80, if that kind of gives you a generic idea of how much it will cost. Now, they do have double stroller options as well. I believe all of their double stroller options are the side-by-side stroller options. I think almost 90% of these stroller rental places have just the side-by-sides. I don't recall. I think there's only one that I found that had the front to back option for double strollers. Again, you're going to have to check websites and see what configurations they have to offer. I looked at a lot of stroller websites and it's hard to remember for sure. But the double stroller options at Scooterbug for cost wise, if you do 1 to 3 days, it's going to be $80. If you do 4 or 5 days, it's going to be $100. So again, you can kind of get that idea. If you need 6 or 7 days, it's $115. So little increments that it goes up kind of per day, depending on what your needs are. And again, scooterbug.com/Orlando for specifics on that. Just a quick note. I know I mentioned earlier about wagons and stroller wagons and accessibility. Scooter Bug is one that does also have an adaptive needs stroller option. However, it does not meet the size qualifications of the Disney park, so it must be tagged as a medical device. So, if you are someone that needs your stroller tagged as a medical device, you can visit guest services at the parks to have your stroller tagged. And Kate and I talked about this long, long time ago on Mom Street. But if you go back to episode 25, we did a whole episode on Disney travel with special needs that will talk a little bit more about strollers and kind of what that process is like. But basically, these tags are available for a guest who meets one of the following is a child with a disability who uses their stroller as a mobility device in lieu of a traditional wheelchair, is a child with additional medical equipment that needs a way to transport their equipment while in a queue, or is an adult with a mobility disability who uses a stroller as a mobility device to assist with walking. Again, you're going to have to check with Disney to see whether or not you qualify. And just a note on that, that you do have to have it tagged and approved at a park. So just make yourself a plan for what that's going to look like, because if they don't approve you, you don't want to be stuck at the park without a stroller or wheelchair that will fit the qualifications of Disney. So just a couple things to note with that. I am also going to mention here while we're talking about Scooter Bug that Scooter Bug is also the official affiliate for Disneyland. So they've got both coasts here kind of under their belt for Scooter Bug. And again, same thing. They have single stroller and double stroller options for Disneyland rentals as well. They have a 1 day option. Single stroller 1 day option for $30. 2 days is 45. 3 days is 60. 4 days is 75, 5 days is 80. For the double strollers, they've got 1 day at $40, 2 days at 60, 3 days at 70, 4 days at 85, and 5 days at 95. So you can kind of find the trend from there. Again, if you want Disneyland, it's scooterbug.com/Anaheim for specifics on that one. Just a quick note with Scooterbug, Disneyland has far less options than Disney World for styles and types of strollers on their website. So be sure you're looking at the correct coast if you are planning to book through Scooterbug. And with Disneyland, just a note that Disneyland bookings do require a hotel confirmation number to finalize the booking. So you have to be staying at either one of the Disneyland hotels or one of their partner hotels and Good Neighbor hotels. And those are all listed on that Scooterbug website. So it's a little bit trickier with that. You can't just be staying anywhere to utilize that Scooterbug drop off. And equipment must be picked up from the hotel staff within 1 hour of your reservation start time for that as well. So that's kind of Scooterbug. Again, they are the direct affiliate with Disney World and Disneyland. But let's talk about some other rental companies. I'm going to give you a couple for World and a couple for Land, just to kind of give you guys some different options. And again, I have not utilized these. I will be completely transparent with you. A lot of these came from our Mom Street community giving suggestions, and also some suggestions that I found on blogs and did a lot of research on and things like that. So that's kind of where this list came from. We're going to start with a few more at Disney World that you can look at. The first one being Kingdom Strollers. Kingdom Strollers is a very popular Walt Disney World stroller rental company. They do have single and double strollers. Again, you will have to double check to see what configurations. I believe Kingdom Strollers only has the side-by-side doubles. For their single stroller prices, 1 to 3 days is $60, 4 to 7 days is $80. For their double strollers, 1 to 3 days is $80, and 4 to 7 days is $100. So again, you can compare prices and styles and things like that on all of these websites. Kingdom Strollers does also have one stroller option for special needs. You will have to check those configurations and dimensions to ensure that that meets the needs for Disney. I believe it does, if I'm remembering correctly, because I didn't write down that it didn't. So I'm going to guess that it does. But again, double check that those dimensions that we talked about earlier in this episode. And just a quick note with Kingdom Strollers, you can also rent cribs, bed rails, and inflatable toddler beds from them as well. So if there are other things that you need while you're down at the parks, Kingdom Strollers has several different options. And some exciting news for our Mom Street listeners, we actually now have an affiliate link with Kingdom Strollers. So that is a new addition to our link tree, which is in all of our social media bios. And I will be sure to put that link, that affiliate link also in our show notes. So if you are someone who is planning to use Kingdom Strollers and would like to support Mom Street, go ahead and click our link to submit your information through. So that way it will be no extra cost to you, and it will give us a little bit of a kickback for that. So that's an exciting new addition. And I did also put that in our Discord channel today. So if you are part of our good friend Kirk at Walrus Carp on his Discord, we have a Mom Street section. It is on that channel. I put that in there earlier, so you can find it there as well. So exciting for us to have that affiliate link with Kingdom Strollers. They're a great company to work with. I can say nothing but good things of everyone that I've interacted with at their companies. So that is one other third-party option for Disney World. The last one that I do just want to briefly mention is one that is Buena Vista Rentals, again for Disney World. I am just going to focus on their stroller options. They do have like ECV options as well. Again, just focused on strollers for the time being. They do have a single stroller option, which is the City Mini stroller. And that is a 1 to 3 day rental is $90. A 4 to 6 day rental is $106. And a 7 day rental is $127. They have a double option, which is also a City Mini double stroller. A 1 to 3 day option is $101. 4 to 6 days is $127. And a 7 day rental is $149. So another option, another reputable company that a lot of people use for different rental needs. Again, full information about what styles they have, what kinds of strollers, what other things they offer to rent, all available on those websites. Just do a quick Google search and you'll be able to find those, no problem. Let's talk about a few at Disneyland. These ones, I will be completely honest with you, were a little bit trickier to find. And that I think is just simply because so many locals go to Disneyland that they don't have as many people that need the rentals out there. So you'll see that there's a few options that are a little bit different than what we talked about at Disney World. But this first one is pretty standard, and that is OC Baby Gear Rentals. And again, this is Disneyland. They do have single strollers, double strollers, and they have cribs and car seats as well. So that's nice if you need some sort of a car seat rental once you're out in Anaheim. If you're flying, they have that option as well. For their single stroller rentals, 1 day ranges between $30 and $35, depending on what kind of stroller you're getting. A 2 day is 45 to 50. 3 day is 55 to 65. 4 day is 70 to 80. You guys get the idea, depending on, again, the style of your stroller that you're getting from them. They have double stroller options. A 1 day double stroller rental is $35. 2 days is 50. 3 days is 65. 4 days is 80. And 5 days is 95. So a little bit closer in price between their single and double options, which I thought was interesting, but again, a really great option. And like I mentioned, they do cribs and car seats as well. Another rental option out at Disneyland is something called Baby Quip, like equipment, QUIP, Baby Quip. And this company is completely different than any other rental company because it uses what they call providers, AKA individuals in the area who are renting out their own personal equipment to others while they are visiting on vacation. So it's not a company that has a stock of rentals that you can utilize. This is a company that uses moms or other people in the area that have this equipment already, that the users sign an agreement and make sure that everything is safe and all that, and go through those kind of checkpoints. But then they rent them out to people. The prices on these greatly vary, so it's hard for me to even give you an estimate on what they cost and what they have. Their stock is very flexible with what they have in stock at any given point because it is all individual based when it comes to what rentals they offer. But they have all sorts of different things: strollers, car seats, cribs, high chairs, even like toys and activity seats. So if you have a little and you're going to Anaheim and this sounds like something you'd be interested in, they have a ton of options. Again, tons of different price points. So it'll take you a little bit longer on this type of a website to search and find what you need for the price that you're looking for, but they're going to have a lot more individualized options on their website as well. The last one that I want to mention at Disneyland is City Strollers. And they have high chairs, pack and place cribs, rain covers, fans, all sorts of stuff. When it comes to their rental options, their single strollers start at just $15 a day. And I couldn't get really much more information from there without like actually putting all of my information in and going through with the rental. But it starts as low as $15 a day, depending on what type of stroller you're looking for. And their double strollers range anywhere from $18 to $23 a day. Again, depends on what you're looking for. This is the only one that I could find at both World and Land that offered a sit and stand stroller. And the reason that I point that out is I love our sit and stand stroller. So basically, if you're not familiar with what that looks like, the front is a standard stroller seat, and the back just has like a little bench seat. But it also has extra foot room where your older kiddos can stand either facing you, like riding backwards, or turn and face forward with their back to you as they're standing in the stroller. I think the sit and stand is really, really great if you've got an older kiddo who maybe doesn't always wanna ride in the stroller, but they want to be able to, like, hop on if you're going across the park, things like that. That's what we use, and it is so, so wonderful to have. The trip prior to this one, we really, really benefited from that because my older kiddo was able to hop in and out as he wanted to, whereas my younger one was just able to stay in the front and enjoy her stroller ride as we were walking around the parks in Disney Springs and things like that. And then on this last trip, we utilized it where my 4-year-old niece used the front of the stroller and my daughter used the back of the stroller as a 6-year-old, and it was just really nice to have that option. And they were both old enough that they could interchange and kind of swap seats. But if you've got a little and then a little bit of a bigger, preschooler or almost school age kiddo, something like a sit and stand is really, really beneficial for that. And their sit and stands at City Strollers for Disneyland rentals do start at $25 a day for that. And again, like I said, they also have high chairs, pack and place cribs, rain covers for your strollers, fans, and more. So lots of options at that location as well. One other option I do just want to mention before we kind of leave the rental portion and talk just a little bit more about some other stroller tips and tricks is another option if you really don't wanna rent one and you really don't wanna bring yours on the plane or you don't have room in your car or whatever it may be, you always have the option to just purchase a smaller umbrella type stroller, and just have it delivered to your resort via Amazon, Target, Walmart, whatever you know, uh, your delivery preference may be. Do keep in mind that if you have packages delivered, they are subject to a fee at the resorts, typically like a $6 processing fee, I want to say, last I checked. But that is another great option. Or if you are renting a car or you have an Uber and you want to have them just stop at Walmart really quick so you can grab a stroller, that's also an option. Lots of people on Facebook groups will leave strollers because they have done just this. They've bought it at the beginning of their trip, used it for the trip, and then they will look, in a Facebook group to pass it on to somebody else that's checking in. So there's always the option for that as well. If you don't want to rent one, but you don't want to bring your own from home, that's another way that you can go. So all of that being said, those are all several different options depending on if you're visiting Disney World or Disneyland for where to rent from and what kind of options are available. Before we kind of wrap up, I do just want to talk about some general park tips for your stroller. So let's talk about marking your stroller in the Disney parks and why this is a good idea. This is a really good idea because you want to have something identifiable and visible on your stroller in the parks. It may be a stroller sign, it may be something else, but I always recommend some sort of marking and some sort of marking that's visible from the top of the handle of your stroller. So I talked about signs. Signs are great, they're super cute, but I always recommend having something on the top handle area because if you're looking out over a sea of strollers, and all you have is that sign that's hanging down, it's going to be really hard to find your stroller. So I recommend some sort of ribbon. We've used tape, different kinds of tape on our handle where you kind of like double it back and leave just an end sticky and then stick it to itself kind of deal. So I something bright and colorful. They make like neon duct tape. I would take a strip and, fold it back over itself, leave about that much empty, about an inch or two of sticky, and then just wrap it on itself to stick it onto your handle to be able to find it. Um we often find ours by our water bottles because we tend to leave some water bottles in the top of ours, but if you're not planning to do that, that's not gonna be super helpful. Um, I would also caution you against using, like, a balloon because, like, Animal Kingdom, you're not allowed to take balloons into the parks. And you will see lots of other balloons on strollers, especially if they are the ones that everybody buys off of Main Street, so something that is identifiable, easy to know that there's our stroller because here's the thing, your stroller's going to get moved. Chances are very, very good that it will get moved. And it's not because somebody's messing with your stroller, it's because there are cast members that are stationed at these stroller parking locations that their job is to consolidate space to make more accessible room for new strollers to be parked. So let's talk about stroller parking and the cast members that do stroller parking. Please, 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 please be sure to pay attention to the signage for stroller parking. Not every attraction has stroller parking directly located outside of it. I'm thinking of like Fantasyland at Disney World. There is stroller parking outside of Winnie the Pooh and Seven Dwarfs. There is stroller parking outside of the carousel. And that's pretty much it. Oh, there's a little bit of stroller parking across from Voyage of the Little Mermaid, or Under the Sea Voyage of the Little Mermaid. But that is it. Um, there's stroller parking over by, like, if you're wanting to go to Haunted Mansion, you have to park by the Tangled bathrooms. So there's just some different options, or you park further down by the marketplace. So again, not every option for attraction has stroller parking directly located outside of it. So pay attention to those parking signs and pay attention to where it says no stroller parking as well. And please just ask a cast member. If you're not sure where to park your stroller and you're trying to go on a ride, just ask them where you can go, and they are going to know. I guarantee you if they work at that attraction or are stationed at that attraction, they're gonna know where to tell you to go and park your stroller. Because if you park in a non-stroller parking area, your stroller will likely be moved and will be much harder to find when you go to try to return to it. Because if they see a stroller just left, those cast members are going to move it to wherever the closest stroller parking is, but you may not know where that is. So just pay attention to that. Make sure you only park in places where you're allowed to park so that way you don't have that issue as well. Another thing to consider is using some sort of an air tag or a tracker on your stroller if you're concerned about not being able to find it. We have done this in the past. We've never needed it. It's never been an issue, but I do know people who have lost their strollers and then found them, way later on in the day because things got moved. So, using some sort of an air tag or a tracker on your stroller is always a good idea just to help be sure in case it does get moved or needs to get moved. Some of those stroller parking areas are larger than others. I think of the stroller parking by the carousel is a very, very large stroller parking area. The, stroller parking over down from and around the corner from, like, Columbia Harbor House is a pretty big parking area that things get shifted a lot. So you just always wanna make sure that you can find your stroller again by using markers on the top of some sort of marking, whether it's a sign or tape or ribbon, like I said, and then, also a tracker is a good idea for that as well. And then a couple other just general stroller notes before we kind of wrap up this episode. At Walt Disney World, if you are visiting the Disney World side of things, or if you are visiting Disneyland when it is the wet season, bring a stroller cover for the rain and use it. I cannot tell you how many times I've gone in to an attraction and kind of looked up and went, oh, those clouds are getting a little dark. Come back out, and it is downpouring, and our stroller is drenched. It has happened to me more times than I'd like to admit. You would think I would learn by now, but I haven't. So always make sure you have a stroller cover with you and be sure to use it. If you think there's a chance of rain, and especially in the afternoon at Disney World during that rainy season, just throw it on. Better safe than sorry, especially if you've got kiddos that are sensitive to wet and rain and water, and if they're gonna have a hard time sitting in your stroller if it's wet, you wanna make sure that you can avoid that at all costs. So that is something that you really want to consider as well. Another thing is just a kind of reminder. I mentioned this earlier, but I do just want to remind you because this is one of the biggest things to think about with strollers. Your stroller will need to be folded up for buses and for parking lot trams. So if you plan to use buses and you plan to drive in a car, your stroller will need to be easily folded up. If you are traveling on the monorail or you are traveling on the ferry boat, your stroller does not have to be folded up. If you are someone using the Skyliner, single strollers do not have to be folded up, and double strollers that are in line, not double wide, do not have to be folded up. Double wide strollers do have to be folded on the Skyliner. All of those things are super important to note. Now, with Disneyland, that doesn't matter as much because you don't have as much transportation across property. But, like, on their monorail, you don't have to fold your strollers up. So if you're someone that's planning to take the monorail from a Disney land-owned resort, something to consider as well when it comes to that. But that is, I think, the biggest thing to consider. Is it an easily folding stroller? Is it something I'm going to have to mess with? Can I do it with one hand if I have to be holding a baby on one hand and folding up the stroller with the other? I had our single stroller was that way when I had just my first one, and it was easy to fold enough that I could hold my son on one hip, grab the strap, yank it up, and my stroller was folded. That's the kind of stroller you want to take to Disney with you. You want it to be easy. You don't want it to be stressful because trying to find a seat on the bus and get on and get off and get everybody with you is way harder and more stressful enough when you don't have an easy stroller to work with. So that is my final parting thought for this episode on strollers. It was a little fast and furious, kind of just a quick overview of strollers. As always, if you've got additional questions or need help planning or have ideas for future episodes of Mom Street USA, we want to hear from you. So you can always send us an email, momstreetusa@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us at Mom Street USA on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us on all of those places as well. Let's talk briefly about what is coming up next before we sign off officially for today. Our next episode for the podcast is going back to the hub. I mentioned that we were going to be circling back to our hub friends here again shortly. And that will be another episode with Duck and Jess. And we are going to talk about spooky season. Yes, we have already arrived to the time of year where we need to start talking about spooky season and what is coming up at the theme parks. So, our next episode will be all things spooky and not so spooky. So, we'll be talking about things like Halloween Horror Nights, things like Not So Scary Halloween Party. All those types of things will be what we are chatting about next on Mom Street. But until then, thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of Mom Street USA. As always, we appreciate your support. Thank you so much for being here, and we will catch you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.